You are watching Tech and AI Live. Welcome to this Fireside chat where we are going to talk about moving to the cloud. Joining me today are Chris Downey, Director of Technology Service at Rotary. Chris joined Rotary as the Director of Technology Services in November 2019 and has been leading the creation, communication, and execution of Rotary's enterprise IT and digital transformation strategy, with focus on data center transformation, technology modernization, operational stability, and streamlined process enhancements. And joining us is Russ Soper, Chief Information Officer at Finastra. Russ joined Finastra, the world's largest pure-play software fintech, in 2018 as Global Head of IT Operations before assuming CIO responsibilities in 2019. Russ is passionate about the intersection of technology and humanity and speaks regularly on how tech can be leveraged beyond improving efficiency to enable emotional, physical, and social well-being. So welcome, Chris and Russ. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So we've got a lot to get through, so let's get straight into it. And I want to kick off by looking at edge computing. But first of all, actually, just to kind of learn a little bit more about your guys' experience with moving to the cloud. We'll start with you, Chris. What is your personal journey of moving to the cloud?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I joined Rotary about 2.5 years ago after 18 years in healthcare and pharma. And I was brought in to really modernize Rotary's infrastructure, which was neglected, out of date, not really cared for a lot of years. And so I've been spending the last 2 years really shoring up our core infrastructure and making sure we have the right systems, processes in place in order to make sure we're sustainable. We are now really embarking on our cloud adoption journey right now, where we are doing an analysis of our on-prem systems. We have some things that are already there in cloud, some things that were built specifically for the cloud. But now we're really looking at everything else that we have left in our data center and really want to use the agility of the cloud in order to respond to our participants, be more agile, be able to move forward. So we're still kind of looking at the initial shots of it, but I've done a lot of planning and a lot of research into what is the right approach to make sure Rotary can take advantage of the cloud capabilities.
Brilliant. So Russ, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey to moving to the cloud?
Sure, thank you. So Finastra, similar to what Chris just mentioned, part of my focus over the last several years has been driving a modernization agenda. And there's a variety of components to that. Most companies have a degree of technical debt and legacy environments that you need to deal with. But a big part of modernization is driving the company forward with agility, with cost efficiencies, with improved reliability. And the cloud has really enabled us to do a lot of those things. So we've been focused in the last several years of taking a good portion of our products, particularly our growth products, and migrating them up to the cloud, as well as modernizing the products even of themselves. It's something that we've been focused on for a number of years and has been very well received by our clients. It has enabled us to really drive modernization, both from a data center footprint perspective, carbon footprint perspective, technical debt reduction, improved security. So it's been a pretty multifaceted approach that we've been on for a journey.
Brilliant. So thanks for that, guys. So like I said, I do want to kind of focus on edge computing first. So keeping with you, Russ, how does edge computing relate to the cloud?
Look, I think edge computing can be seen almost as a response to cloud computing, right? The cloud provides a wonderful centralized solution, so companies don't need to provide or host or manage their own infrastructure. Edge computing is more focused on storing and processing closer to the source. So lower latency is a big driver. Similar to, for those that have used in the past, low latency co-location facilities that physically locate workloads closer to where they're needed. My world has predominantly been financial services, but you'll find edge computing very prevalent in all industries, things from electric vehicle, traffic management systems, retail, manufacturing, security, those types of things. IoT, Internet of Things, are very good use cases for edge computing. It's really a correlation of the cloud being centralized and the edge taking pieces that need to be closer to the source and not having them traverse those long haul connections back to the cloud to a centralized location.
Okay, brilliant. So from what you've said, it sounds like they work quite well together. So thinking about that, Chris, how easy is it to integrate edge computing with cloud environments, and what are the benefits of doing that?
Well, just to kind of build on what Russ said, the advantage of cloud computing is you've already moved that stuff out of your data center. You're able to take advantage of the scalability, the agility, and the integrations that you have within the cloud. So to go with what Russ had mentioned, distributing that workload, once things are in the cloud, it makes those integrations easier. You've already moved those systems out into something that can take advantage of that scalability. And a lot of those cloud solutions really have the integrations into edge computing kind of inherent or built in. So once you've already made that leap, you're already taking advantage of everything that the cloud can bring forward. It makes it that much easier to then go to the edge. You've already kind of distributed what your workloads are, and being able to utilize the connectivity and the partnerships that you have with those cloud solution providers can make that easier to expand, easier to implement, and then easier to support ongoing.
Okay, brilliant. So we kind of seem to be talking about hybrid cloud here. So Russ, what are the benefits of running a hybrid cloud system?
Look, I think in a word, it would be flexibility. You could support users all around the globe as they work remotely. It would give you increased access to addressable markets with an expanded geographic footprint, depending on your customer preference. There's cost benefits, obviously. Anytime you have a hybrid model, it gives you an opportunity to lever certain activities depending on what is the best fit for purpose model. So certainly there's financial synergies, greater business continuity when you have multiple models, multiple providers. That gives you multiple failover capabilities, greater resiliency. I think there's a high degree of risk flexibility as well. You can choose where to house data based on security or risk or regulatory requirements. So, in a word, I would say flexibility.
Okay, brilliant. And so you mentioned about that, the risk flexibility. So Chris, if we think about risk and different fail-safes, what other fail-safes can be built into an entirely cloud-based system to avoid data loss?
Well, Russ just mentioned one of them, that data segmentation within the cloud is a lot easier. You don't have to worry about building other systems, putting in other firewall controls in place. A lot of those cloud systems have that data segmentation, being able to move or put different controls on your different types of data within the cloud is inherent within those cloud systems. So you already have kind of the data segmentation where you put data in place. There's a lot of inherent security controls that you already have within the cloud that you can take advantage of. Integration with additional monitoring systems to be able to take a look at intrusion prevention, take a look at anomalies within accessing your data, be able to use those tools that either your cloud providers provide inherently, or the integration of those cloud providers into any of your other managed detection and response systems to be able to see what's happening and be able to scale up when you need to. And then in the event that something bad were to happen, and fortunately in the environment we're in, it's almost not an if, but when, right? Some sort of data loss or some sort of incident's going to happen. You have increased capability to recover. You've got backup, you've got recovery that you have there. And then you have the ability to duplicate and scale systems if you need to. If you have systems that are compromised, being able to recover from those, either from backups or if necessarily, scale up and build new and isolate systems that are compromised. The agility, the scalability, the responsiveness that you have of the cloud just makes that all that much quicker than trying to handle things that you have on-prem where you're dealing with either legacy virtual systems or with physical hardware.
Okay, brilliant. And obviously we're here talking about this move to cloud. So Russ, is it possible to have an entirely cloud-based system?
Yes, look, I think it is. It is possible. I think it would depend on an organization's needs. Some larger companies, as we mentioned, they've been around a while. They may have co-location facilities or their own data centers they own, which they'll have significant investment in, or they could have technical debt that will be around for a while. Additionally, in some cases, I think there may be cross-border data residency regulatory requirements. Such as in the case of financial services, where it dictates you have to have a presence in certain countries and the data can't leave it. So I think larger companies may have to work through some of those items in order to achieve what they feel is the right balance of short versus long term. Other industries such as manufacturing, who might be more focused on IoT, may have more of a mix of cloud and edge to be a higher priority. So I think it depends on an individual company's needs of whether going entirely cloud is the right fit and when. But it's certainly very appealing, and it's certainly possible depending on your needs. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if I can, maybe I can just add one other point into that too, is we're starting to see the nature of work changing, right? People being more remote. A lot of companies are really evaluating the need, the requirements, or the advantage of having people sitting in an office. I think that movement of the majority, if not all of your systems entirely to the cloud, if you're going to have a remote workforce, if you're going to have a workforce that isn't sitting in a physical location, that makes the cloud or purely cloud systems all that much more attractive, because now it doesn't matter. People can work anywhere. They can access their data. They can access their systems in the cloud. And that makes it much more attractive than when I had everybody that was sitting in a building. The cloud makes that remote work capability and what the future of work will be all that much more attainable.
Definitely. So it's almost like COVID acted as a catalyst for cloud technology, because people kind of have no choice. They had to move home. They had to stay safe. So in doing so, more people need to adopt those technologies to facilitate that remote working. It's interesting how a pandemic such like that can shift the way businesses operate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking more at kind of cloud security, Russ, what potential security risk for using a cloud-based system, particularly in the finance sector?
In the finance sector, look, I suspect the answer would vary depending on who you spoke to. In my view, I would say that two of the bigger items would be compliance requirements. Those vary around the world per region and per country. So, that would include very granular identity and access management, data controls required for regulatory environments, things like PCI DSS, or et cetera. So I think that's one of the challenges, I would say, both in technology and in even just emotion. A lot of in the financial services clients, people getting comfortable with it, is the regulatory regime that exists around the world. And then the second question that comes up a lot is data segregation between clients and data protection in general, again, or data access. The cloud has evolved. All major cloud providers have evolved to this point to provide all the level of protection, frankly, better protection than maybe cost effective to deploy in on-prem legacy environments. The capabilities are there. So there is a bit of a, what I found, at least during the cloud journey, is getting people comfortable with understanding the capabilities and how the data can be protected. There's this innate fear that I'm on the cloud, therefore does that make my data more accessible? And that's not really the case. So it's educating, it's making sure you have the right tools and you share that with your clients so that the adoption can be a comfortable one. I would say a smaller one, those would be the two big factors. A smaller one, just to add in, would be from a technical administration perspective, something that you need to work around is limited visibility into certain aspects of the environment. So for instance, when you own all the technology within your colo facility or your data center, you're going to have monitoring into every aspect of your network and application layer. And when you're going to the cloud, some of that is a different view. You're looking at more application layer metrics and some more macro metrics for an infrastructure perspective. So slightly different telemetry involved.
Okay, brilliant. And obviously with these security risks, people need to think of protection. So Chris, what protections are available for a cloud-based system?
Yeah, we mentioned a few of those already, things like data segmentation and the ability to bring in tool sets, those types of things, integration with other aspects that are there. So I think a lot of those things, and that security for those cloud systems ends up being in the forefront of mind. So really it comes into that agility, being able to spin up new systems, being able to spin up new capabilities within your cloud as you need to react back and forth. And to Russ's point just a few minutes ago about, you do lose that visibility for what you have on-prem. But at the same time, there is that flexibility, there's that segmentation where you can move away from the traditional hard outer shell, soft GUI middle that you may have had when you were dealing with your data center and dealing with firewalls on the outside. You can architect and design your system to be more secure, to be able to protect your private data. And then the responsibility for some of that with your cloud providers, you have good SLAs, you have good recovery that's there. So some of that accountability that you may have within your staff now moves to that cloud provider. You need to make sure that you have the right data processing agreements in place. You need to make sure you have the right contracts and SLAs that are there. But in working with a mid-sized IT shop like ours, and we are a nonprofit, so we are not an IT shop by trade. That's attractive to us to say that I need to have a degree of security experts in place. But as we move to the cloud, as long as we architect that and we work with our cloud partners in the right way, some of that accountability or some of that responsibility also relies with our cloud partners, and it isn't all inherently on the relatively small IT staff that we have.
Okay, brilliant. So I want to kind of end the discussion there because we've had some great questions coming from the audience. So I just want to say thanks to those who sent them through. So I'll start with you, Russ. So what are the challenges that you encountered during your cloud migration? Oh, I think you're on mute, Russ.
Sorry about that. They would vary, I think, depending on the timeliness, and I think they would vary depending upon what your product suite is like. Some of the challenges we encountered were with some of our legacy products doing a lift and shift, where I mentioned some of them earlier, right? Getting our clients comfortable with the security aspects was a piece of it. But from a technical perspective, in a lift and shift fashion, I think it's important to ensure you have adequate visibility on how the product is architected and operated, particularly if it's legacy monolithic architecture, it's not multi-tenant or elastic, etc. The actual migration itself, in a lift and shift fashion, is not going to be terribly problematic, but understanding the operational aspects once you've migrated, particularly the financials associated with operating a product that may not be architected for the cloud. It may not be cloud native architecture. I think understanding that early on will really help you make better informed decisions as to what should go to the cloud versus what may not be financially viable to go to the cloud or would have an additional operating expense associated with it. Getting I think there's a view that people have going to the cloud is automatically going to save you money. And it can under the right circumstances. But if you have a legacy product suite that is monolithic, not elastic, frankly, the financials are an important aspect you need to really focus on. I think that would be one of the larger lessons that we've learned.
Brilliant. So, Chris, I saw you nodding your head there, so I assume you had some similar challenges.
Yeah, there are some of the similar challenges, and ours have really evolved. And I think, Russ, you're bringing some great points there about financial aspects, and people think that it's going to be a cost savings capability to go to the cloud. And that was never really in the cards as we were looking at it from Rotary's standpoint.
I think we've lost Chris there.
Yeah, you lost me for a second there.
So if you could start that question again for me.
Yeah. No, I can start that again. I don't know if that was me or you guys, but you went away. So, Rotary's journey has changed a bit. Russ mentioned the whole cost savings aspect of it, and that was never really in play for Rotary. We have our current data center that's sitting on the 13th floor of our building here outside of Chicago with old legacy equipment. You don't get much cheaper than that. Your own data center with old stuff. When we originally looked at the cloud journey, we were using it as more of a availability aspect of it. Our data center had numerous problems. There were a number of outages behind it. And so there was an attitude to say, we need to get everything onto the cloud now so we can keep things running. We started down that road and put a pause on things for a little bit while we made sure that we were ready for that. And now we're really looking at the cloud as an agility play to further Rotary's mission. Rotary is 117 years old. We have 1.4 million members worldwide, and we're embarking on an entire digital strategy transformation program that isn't just an infrastructure in what we have with the cloud, but it's looking at our products, looking at our product teams, aligning along dedicated product teams to make sure we can be more responsive, that we can focus on our participant experience in a better way to make sure that we're providing better services to our volunteers. And it's really our volunteers and participants that are doing the great work that Rotary is behind. And so we see our journey to the cloud now more of a, how can we provide that agility? How can we increase that responsiveness to deliver better products to our participants rather than, hey, we're going to save cost or we're going to make things more available? How can my team support our product teams to do the good work that they are for the people that are helping transform the world through Rotary's activities?
Brilliant. So it's interesting to hear that how there are similarities between so many businesses that have this journey. So with these big big migrations to the cloud, obviously there's going to be key objectives. So Ross, one for you from the audience is, what were the objectives of moving to the cloud, and were those the benefits that came from those objectives realized?
Yeah, look, the short answer would be modernization was the objective, and but I would say, I touched on a bit of this earlier. I think some of what we realized as tangential benefits, we probably didn't fully appreciate up front. So certainly modernization was the prime directive, and our clients, demanded it. I think the point you made earlier about COVID bringing the world of not only remote working but cloud and mobile forward probably by a decade I would underscore that. We absolutely saw that our clients, if they were leaning towards cloud, they became heavily invested emotionally with increased traction with the onset of COVID. So some of the tangential benefits that we saw that I think we hoped would materialize, and some that materialized more than we expected, where it really helped us consolidate our data center footprint. So it helped our people agenda. Where do we need staff? How flexible can we be our staff? Where they need to work? If we're not tied to physical data centers, we have a lot more flexibility for staff. It helped our carbon footprint. ESG is very important to Finastra, so that was a very good benefit there. It improved our security profile. As we mentioned before, there are a lot of tools and capabilities that have been integrated into the cloud providers that would be costly and resource intensive to deploy and implement in our own environments, in all of our legacy environments. Everything from IDS, IPS, segmentation, et cetera, next generation firewalls, cutting edge authorization, identity and access management, et cetera. Technical debt, as we migrated to the cloud, we were able to address a lot of the legacy technical debt. And probably the other one that I think we underestimated was it improved our financial acumen by helping us understand what it really truly costs to run some of our products, to operate them. We had good ideas, but this really helped us crystallize what the operating financials were. So a lot of benefits, and like any big complex migration, it's a journey, and some of them we were pleasant surprises, were bigger benefits than we anticipated, and others we're still looking to mature on the journey that we're on.
Brilliant. So like we've kind of touched on throughout this discussion, is it very much is a journey. And for you, Chris, Rotary still is kind of in the early phase of its cloud migration journey. So what factors are you keeping in mind as you plan to kind of continue on this journey?
Yeah, we're trying to take a look at, your typical three aspects, and I think people have a tendency to forget. We want to look at things with a people, process, and technology lens. When we first take a look at cloud migration, everybody thinks about, what is the technology that's in place? Our big thing is there's a lot of integrations. Rotary, even though we are a nonprofit, we've been around for a long time, we have a lot of systems that are integrated together, and there's a lot of complexity that you wouldn't necessarily expect in a business like ours. But as we've built things and deployed new products over the years, we've kind of built layers upon layers. So we're really doing a deep dive into those on-prem systems to make sure that there's no unintended technological consequences of moving things to the cloud. We don't move this system out there not knowing that it's integrated with another system. Now we have performance problems or security issues or something else that comes in. So doing a deep dive in the technology and understanding the integrations, the connectivity, the dependencies between the systems is our first shot. And then we really want to focus on our people. This is a new technology. We had started down a cloud road, and frankly, we put it on pause because we kind of got ahead of the game. We moved some systems out there, we deployed new stuff, but it is a new way of working. It is a new skill set that people didn't necessarily have. And what we found was that we had systems that were deployed. When it came into support, it was a challenge. So we really want to focus on our people, make sure we have the right people with the right training, the right experience, the right organizational structure to support that in the cloud before we get out there, so we don't have another kind of stop and start. And then updating our processes. We have been on a DevOps journey for a lot of years for stuff that's on-prem, but now as we move towards the cloud, there's your automation, there's your capabilities that you have in the cloud. So as we're moving to the cloud, we want to make sure that we have our processes in place, because it is a different way of working. It's a different skill set when you're looking automation, infrastructure as code, and all those types of things. So we're really trying to plan that entire aspect out to make sure we understand what is the technology we have in place. Is it going to work the way that it needs to Do we have the people with the right training, the right skills, the right capabilities to support it? And then do we have the underlying process in place in order to make sure we support things in the right way and take advantage of those cloud capabilities that we're really looking to improve our business and our organization as a whole?
Brilliant. So it's really interesting because obviously you're kind of at the start of your journey, and we do only have 5 minutes left, so I think we could probably squeeze one more question. Maybe the both of you could answer this. It would be, if you are going to give anybody who is starting their cloud journey a bit of advice, what would be the advice that you would give them? So we'll start with you, Russ.
The advice I would give is invest time up front before you decide what is going to go into the cloud and how it's going to go. I think what I've seen, even prior to my time at Finastra, I was at a large investment bank, and we went on an extensive cloud journey. And I think the cloud is so core to everything that we're doing now. It's, as Chris has articulated, it's core to the skills we need with our teams. It's core to our product architecture, as we talked about. It's core to our tooling strategy. So it's such a core integral thing. Deciding how you're going to do it and what's going to go on the cloud and how, I think, don't jump immediately to we need to get in the cloud as quickly as possible and get caught up in the euphoria. We actually call that internally cloud euphoria, where everybody just runs to it, and then you wind up having to address things afterwards. So carefully map out your product architecture, what goes up to the cloud, mixture of hybrid, mixture of cloud versus edge, all those things. The more time you put it up front in architecture, the smoother it will go.
Yeah, I agree. Doing that upfront planning, and the cloud is not a panacea, right? It does not fix everything. If you have a poorly designed or overly complex or overly integrated system on-prem, it's still going to be a poorly designed, overly complex, and overly integrated system in the cloud too, right? So the cloud doesn't fix all of those issues. It allows you to scale. It allows you to adapt. It allows you to potentially, for some of your technical debt aspects that you mentioned, Russ, extend some of that support that's there. But it's not going to solve all of those problems. If you have poor processes, you're still going to have poor processes when you're in the cloud. So doing that upfront planning and making sure that you're not just looking at the technology of what do I have and what am I moving, but looking at how you're going to operate as an organization, I think is really key, and making sure that that's there, because people without the right skill sets or not settled processes or poor security practices are just going to be exacerbated when they're in the cloud. They don't go away just because you're moving things off-prem.
Brilliant. So I think that'll be really helpful for our audience. So thank you so much. And I do think we're going to wrap it up there. So thanks to you, Chris, and to you, Russ, for joining us today. It was a really great discussion, and I'm sure the audience will enjoy it as much as I have. So yeah, thank you for joining us.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And thank you to the audience for tuning into this discussion, and make sure you stay tuned and check out the rest of our speakers for Tech and AI Live.